Welcome guys to another episode of Blueprint Mentors. Today we're going to be talking to a very inspiring guest. He's a software engineer at Google and is also working on a very exciting, impactful project at GoogleX. Today we're going to talk about how he got into a big tech company like Google, and also a little bit about what it's like having a project at GoogleX, and any other tips and advice that he's willing to share with us today. So yeah, hope you enjoy it.
So let's talk a bit about your story and your background. How did you start with programming? What were your first steps?
So I actually wanted to be a designer of aircrafts when I was a child, but then later at some point I realized that programming seems like a good tool to achieve different goals, so you can build different exciting apps and create something meaningful. And it was also very interesting. I played lots of computer games like GTA, for example, and at some point at school I was thinking even to become a designer or like to create like different models in 3D Max and so on. And I was like building my school, and then like there was a famous magazine in Russia like about game dev, and you could like they had lots of plugins, and you can introduce into the GTA, for example, different models. So I was building my school and home and like different cars, and I was introducing them into the game. So it was really exciting for me to see how it works. And I wanted to be maybe a game developer or something like that. So I started looking into programming on the like 9th grade at school. So my parents helped me to find right people who know about programming, and they taught me a little bit. And then I went to some like Olympiad in informatics. It was like kind of a team of 3 people, 1 computer, 5 hours, and maybe 9 to 13 algorithmic problems. So you all together trying to solve them as soon as possible and cracking those challenges. And it's basically how it works, and the team with the highest score kind of wins the competition. And it was very exciting because of the community. First of all, you can travel around different places. I think with my uni we went going like every month to a new city, and we met the kind of similar people who is really into that kind of stuff, and it was great to build this kind of network of people who really want to kind of tackle difficult algorithmic problems, and it was lots of fun. So yeah, it brought me like more traveling and knowledge about algorithms.
Would you say that competitive programming helped you to land a job at Google?
Oh, definitely yes. I think at the low level it should help everyone. So for example, if you do it for a year or so, it's going to be really beneficial to crack the interviews, because the interviews they're much easier than the algorithms or like problems that you have to solve in the competitive programming contest like in ACM.
Yeah, so I think that's actually really interesting, right? Because as far as I understand, competitive programming is very much like these abstract algorithmic challenges, right?
Yeah.
And I guess like working at Google, like as a software engineer, right, it's a bit of a different skill set, right? So I guess to what extent do you think they overlap, and what extent do you think they sort of do build upon each other?
Mm-hmm. So about the overlap, I think first of all you become kind of unlimited in a way that you try to tackle the problem as soon as possible, to create some like rapid prototype as soon as possible to make sure it works. And you can estimate all the like complexity and everything real quick and build that solution. And the worst thing, like I think that doesn't overlap, is how to build maybe something reliable for not reliable necessarily, but like production scale system, for example. So this knowledge doesn't overlap well. So
I'm sure like writing the tests, writing all of the sort of checks and QC.
Yeah, because on the contest you have like time to live with like lifetime of the program is like 5 hours in the best case scenario, so it should work like really longer. And in the like Google, for example, you build in a reliable like distributed software that should be like working for. So for example, the code quality should be slightly different, so it should be easy to read and so on, easy to maintain. So that's kind of different skill to learn.
Yeah.
Where do you start with competitive programming? Let's say I want to start. Where do I go? What do I do?
That's a good question. So currently there's lots of platforms. For example, codeforces.com or topcoder.com, HackerRank, and many more. And you can just start. Like for example, Codeforces has contests every week or so, like happening. So there's like a 2-hour contest, and you can participate. They've got ELO rating like in chess, for example. So every person has its own rank, and you kind of it becomes more interesting because you have this kind of courage to be better than the others, than your friends, and or I don't know.
Or to get to the grandmaster level.
Yeah, grandmaster level, and yeah. So that's more interesting than just solving. So I would say also. It's just you go there, you start small, just start solving them. There's a huge community around these places, so lots of people could recommend you doing anything. The other thing would be great to find like training buddies. Like if you go to the gym, it's like much harder if you go alone. With the training buddies, it's much easier. So for example, if you've got a few friends who's really into that, then it's going to be like really helping. Because imagine you live like in Russia, people don't know what's the competitive programming or what the hell are you doing behind the computer, and you are spending like 7 hours a day training, like 5 hours contest plus 2 like kind of editorial and like working on your mistakes. And if you do this multiple times a week, people don't really understand what the hell are you doing, and it's really easy to lose your kind of motivation to do so. And if you've got training buddies, it's so much easier because yeah.
But that's actually something interesting, right? Like you mentioned that, like it's a little bit of a niche topic, a bit obscure, right? But what struck me is that you actually said you started programming not because you're like, I want to solve these algorithms, right? It's sort of, I want to do game design, right? And I think for me personally, like my story is very similar. Like I did some competitive programming, not to your level, of course. But I started sort of being like, I want to learn how to build things. I want to learn, how do I build this game or this app, right? And it seems like that's sort of the more common path than, go really deep into algorithms at first. Right?
That's definitely more common path. And I don't know what to say about this. It's like if you do competitive programming, it can lift you up in terms of algorithmic knowledge. For example, if you do this like 5 years, you're training real hard, and then you become, this is kind of your second nature. So you feel how algorithm works, like how to build the like different data structures. So this could be a really helpful skill to tackle different problems. And I believe that's really helping. But maybe it's not for everyone, and I think if you want to work in a big tech, you don't need to do this like for a while or something. I think 1 year should be like more than enough to pass all the interviews and so on.
Really cracking a code interview.
Like there's a book like that, and I think everyone recommends this. When I was passing the interviews, I like had a look into the book, and I'm like, it's more like the tips about how to write on the whiteboard or something like that is more useful for the interviews.
Yeah, definitely.
What advice can you give a younger person who just wants to start with programming and land a job as a software engineer in one of the top tech companies?
I think start small, so pursue your dreams and like do whatever inspires you. So like if you start with a small project and you can learn easily the technology to see how it works. So for example, if you build a website and if you're really into that kind of stuff, and you can build it and you will be really excited about this, so it will boost your confidence and motivation and so on. The second thing is like, of course, you need like training buddies and maybe mentors or some people like that. So it would be really great to find people who know how to do a certain thing, so they can like advise you on what to do. So networking is really important for that as well. And there's like, you can learn anything now on YouTube, or but like you don't need to
A lot of sources available.
Yeah, so that's actually a question I think I'm sure you guys sort of, as someone's technical, you get asked quite often by friends who are like, oh, maybe I should learn programming, maybe I shouldn't, right? And I guess, do you think that like, you should learn programming if you're going to be dedicated to it? Or do you think, someone can casually get into it, right? There's a lot of people who, our friends who, they're designers maybe, they're working, as lawyers and it's like, hey, I want to sort of know how it works, right? Do you think that's possible?
Yeah.
Or do you think you need to really dedicate yourself 100%?
That's definitely possible, and I think that's how it should work. Programming in itself is not that, like, I don't know, there's interesting things like theoretical computer science and so on. You can pursue this path, but I see programming is just like a tool. For example, if you can read or write, that's a tool, and you can use it to tackle any like
problems. Tool, basically.
Yeah. So like you can be a biologist and you can read like papers, and that's really helpful. And the same, like if you can do a little bit of like Python or data science stuff, that's going to be really beneficial in your biology thing. So I think that's how it should work.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it definitely gives a lot of leverage, right? Even if you're doing like biology, right? If you can sort of cook up some Python, you can do something no one else can.
Yeah, actually, what programming languages would you advise to learn today?
That's a good question. So maybe starting with something that is being used in multiple projects. So depending on like what you really want to do. So if like I think JavaScript would be kind of helpful entry level for building web applications. Like Python would be more good, very useful language for like data science and so on, those kind of things if you want to build things real quick. I mean, you can start learning like a C language, but it's gonna kill your motivation because you don't see...
You want to keep it fun.
Yeah, it's... Well, it is some sort of weird fun, but at the same time, it depends. Like if you especially if you're a beginner, it would be great to start with something like simple, so you can build something and see how it works, see the results. Then you can go deeper and learn those languages and so on. I'm a big fan of functional programming languages. It's like different paradigm in computer science. And it seems most of the languages move in that kind of direction. So it would be really interesting to look into those, but I don't think it's like entry level. So
yeah, that's sort of like going into the deep end before you know how to swim, right?
But it's also very exciting, like rabbit hole. If you go down there, it's like very exciting. Okay.
What it's like to work at Google and also combining your work on the project at GoogleX?
So Google is an interesting company. So for example, if you want to it allows basically, there's a such thing called the 20% projects, and every employee, if they have like a good kind of performance at work, they can join any 20% project, or they can start a 20% project and work on that. So I am working at X on the 20% project, that's really exciting because you can learn more skills in kind of outside of your main work, and then you can bring them into your main team. And for example, if it's like really growing and very successful, you have other choice to move teams and working on that kind of stuff. And I think this should be really encouraged in all software companies. There's a few other things happening in Google. For example, there's Area 120. So this is like internal startups, and apparently, if you have a good idea, you can pitch it to the kind of committee, like investors, basically in real life. And if they like the idea, then Google can give you kind of money and like all the resources that needed to succeed on that role, and you can work full time for half a year on that. It's a really exciting thing. There was a host matching interview process. Basically, overall structure is like very interesting. By the way, like how internships works. You have like two hosts guiding you at the same time when you're working. And so after the host matching interview, basically I started the internship in Mountain View. I was in basically backend team for Google Maps and Earth. So
Okay,
we were
cool.
processing satellite images together and kind of stitching them. And I was working on improving spatial accuracy of satellite imagery. It was like really exciting work.
Yeah, I guess for those of us that sort of, I don't know, I guess the host matching process is a bit, for me it was nerve-wracking, right? Yes,
Yeah,
talk a bit more about that.
could be like nerve-wracking. I know lots of friends, for example, they didn't manage to find a host, and I was like lucky. I had a few host matching interviews, and it's also you never know how it's gonna work. Like first interview, it was like first host matching interview went really well, smoothly, and I felt so good after like talking to the like future host.
Yeah.
But apparently, like in a week, they told sorry. Like we like went ahead with the other candidate, and then there was another host matching interview. It didn't go kind of smoothly. I thought, okay, that's a clear failure, and then it's like worked out. So kind of you never know, but it is a little bit like nerve-wracking.
Would you say it's possible to get into a company like Google without a referral?
I think it's definitely possible, and I think recruiting team works to like reaching out to different candidates who like from different universities with different backgrounds, and like they're looking into different conferences and so on. But the pool of candidates is like so enormously huge. So if you want to start working at Google, I think it's like. And you definitely need a referral. So it is possible that it's gonna work. And I know some people who, for example, on the Google page, there's something appeared. Like, for example, if you type a certain question like regarding programming, it asks you to solve a quiz, and the person like just solved the quiz
like
for
on the
fun.
website.
Yeah, it was like kind of ad style, basically. Like
it's like a CIA style type thing.
Do you want to solve this, like play this game, and then you like play the game, and it was about programming and how this person got like job this way. But I think if you're planning to work at Google, definitely start with a referral. It's much easier to.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting, right? Because like as much as I think we think it's all about skill and all about your ability, it seems like both the referral process, the host matching process, right, where you're trying to find a project and a manager, that's a lot more soft skills, networking, and relationships than I think you might expect, right?
Yeah. Also, if you're from the country where like English is not the first language, it could be real hard. Because like for me, my English is still kind of crappy, but like back then it was like completely really bad, so I couldn't understand what they were talking to me, and it was like not hard to solve the problems, but hard to understand like what they're asking for. And this kind of changed after the internship, and it kind of got better. But by Google
I guess sort of like hypothetically, right? Let's say like you're from not a target school, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's very run-down, but you're pretty smart, you're really good, right? You're studying hard, like, and you maybe don't know anyone, right? Because you're not in the environment. How would you go about actually like reaching out to people, connecting?
There's I think multiple ways. Like I don't know, if you're trying to kind of hack the reality, you can go to LinkedIn, find some Googlers, text.
Respect that hustle, right?
Yeah. But I don't know. It's not that I'm like recommended doing it, but it's gonna work probably. If you like text 100 people, at least one should reply, and you're there. But I guess if you if you're from taking part in some like competitions or participating in conferences, there's a quite kind of high chance that you will find recruiters on your own, and you will find some people who's working at Google, so that should work as well.
Fair enough. I guess shifting gears a bit, right? You talked about how you do this 20% project.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like day to day, right? Is it like you spend 20% of the day, like 9 a.m. to noon? Or is it like Tuesday, Mondays? Or what does that look like, right? Working on multiple projects at the same time.
So I think it's really flexible, and it's up to you as long as you solve like those problems that you have to solve. So for me, it's also really depends. For example, sometimes you have a smaller task but which require kind of every day looking after them, and for those days I work maybe like 1 hour or a bit more a day to like work on that. Sometimes some people I know do, like for example this particular day I'm working on that project, not on anything else. I think it's kind of a good approach as well, but for me it's more like kind of hectic depending on what is more important at that point. So for example, if a deadline in one project and another is more relaxed, so I can focus more on that and then get this time back on the other project later.
Are there any differences working from the Mountain View office versus London office?
Yeah, I think they are quite different, and there's a different lifestyle. So I think they're completely different. So in Mountain View, it feels like if you live in Mountain View itself, it feels like a huge village with a bunch of like startuppers, entrepreneurs, and it like, I don't know, fairy tale. It's like hard to believe you're living there. It's less, for me personally, it's less exciting than London, because you can go out in the city and you can see different stuff. But at the same time, in Mountain View, you have a bigger variety of like different companies. London is also not as bad, but it's like lots of headquarters located in Silicon Valley, and you can leverage that to find more projects for like whatever you like. The other thing is the salary. So for example, salaries in Mountain View are usually in average higher than in London, and
I think as all of us who moved from the US to London, we definitely feel that.
It feels but at the same time London is kind of hub, so you can travel anywhere, and I like kind of cultural aspect of London more. I think it's better probably to compare London to SF, San Francisco. Thanks everyone for watching this video. If you like it, please share it with your friends, grandma, your cat. If you'd like to donate, there's a link to Children Cancer Leukemia Group in the description.